I'm joined by Robert Clark, a fellow at the Yorktown Institute, Telegraph Columnist, and perhaps most personally, a former soldier who's deployed to both Iraq and Afghanistan. Good morning to you, Robert.
Good morning, Matthew.
So, the legality of the war, at the moment, what is your take at present?
Well, as you read out, I'm a Defence Research Fellow and a former soldier, so just as a caveat, I'm not an international lawyer and have no experience or background in law. But my understanding of this, it's very separate to 2003. Now, I understand why a lot of people are making the comparisons with the Iraq War, particularly in light of the highly contagious legal aspect of that campaign. This, I think, is a lot different. We're dealing with an existential threat to Israel for the last 46 years, since 1979 Islamic Revolution. And since that time, the Iranian regime have consistently called for the elimination of the Israeli state, not the destruction of the Israeli government or the removal of the government in Israel, but the eradication of the state itself.
True.
So that's very separate to what happened in 2003 in the run-up to the invasion of Iraq. Separately to that as well, Israel and credible intelligence from Mossad have predicted the breakout time for the Iranian nuclear program, which does exist. There was obviously the JCPOA from back in 2016 was designed specifically to curtail Iran's nuclear program to some success, but to a lot of weakness. And it's really the ability to try and limit the breakout time, which is estimated anywhere between 2 to 3 months, and at a push could probably be taken within 4 weeks. The breakout time is really important because the technical detail in Iran's nuclear program is so advanced that it would only take, we are talking a matter of weeks for them to develop into weapons-grade enriched uranium to the 90% threshold, which would give around about 9 nuclear weapons. Now, obviously, 9 nuclear weapons is nothing on the scale of most nuclear-armed states, but that's still enough capability and intent to give Israel the self-defense clause under the UN Charter 50 of self-defense. But that's a perceived threat.
But that's the big rub, isn't it? Because if I was to draw a parallel again with 2003, all we have is conflicting intelligence reports about the state of Iran's, not if its enrichment program, but its nuclear weapons program, with the head of US security saying there isn't a program. And she was reporting that, back in March? So she's since sort of backtracked to some degree, saying that she and Donald Trump are on the same page. But we are talking at the moment about intelligence that doesn't seem entirely concrete. And with respect, that is exactly how the situation was in 2003. We were told there were weapons of mass destruction. We were told they were pointing at us. They were told they were ready to go in 45 minutes. It was the front page story on The Sun, that line from Parliament, and they weren't there.
Sure. In any issue like this, there's always going to be, as you said, conflicting intelligence. We're never going to have unanimous consent amongst all intelligence agencies and all countries. But we're not talking about our intelligence or American intelligence in the specific case for military action. We're talking about Israeli intelligence in the sense of they're the ones who are going to be conducting this campaign, this war, which they've already initiated on the basis of their own intelligence. So I would argue it is for the Israeli government to answer for their intelligence estimates.
But Netanyahu has been making these assertions about Iran's nuclear program in detail since, I think, 1992, when that Israel was going to be wiped off the face of the earth in 7 months. And it's after a while, seasoned observers get a little tired of hearing about imminent threats that actually don't transpire to be true. So having heard Netanyahu talk about imminent threats for 30-odd years, you can forgive someone like myself for thinking, well, why is it more imminent today? Where's the proof? Where's the evidence? We've heard this story so many times before.
So one of the big differences between now and 1992, over the last 30 years or so, is the IAEA's, their own independent verifications. They've estimated that Iranian nuclear enrichment is up to 60%. This was as of May, so only about 4 weeks ago, was their latest quarterly intelligence estimate. And even in that estimate, they acknowledged that was difficult to ascertain any higher, precisely because Iran don't communicate or, deal with the IAEA in a way that is, transparent. And
neither does Israel, though, does it? Neither does Israel when it comes to its nuclear weapons program. It's never even confirmed it has them. I suppose the final question, Robert, is, again, it would be a very important one for British listeners, is even if we take everything you say as being absolute gospel truth, is this a conflict that Britain should be drawn into at all? Is this not a situation? It's an existential threat for Israel. Israel receives $18 billion of armaments from the United States. Do they really need us getting involved in this? We've got the threat in Ukraine, which seems a pressing, realistic danger to British citizens. Getting involved in a war in the Middle East looks like it would just simply add to cost. You go for tax on shipping lanes, rising oil. It doesn't seem like this. Is it going to be in our best interests?
The first thing I'd say is, and this is a personal note, but it's worth remembering because it's quite often forgotten about. The Iranian regime, which is the same regime as it is now, it was then, are responsible for thousands of US service personnel's deaths in Iraq and scores of British. That's well documented, that's evidence. Yeah. So when we talk about the threat to Britain in terms of the Iranian regime, this is a regime that has direct British blood on its hands. In terms of the more important question for the here and now is, should we get involved? It's more of a question of can we and what options we would have. Now, obviously, America, they are Israel's preeminent ally, and they are the only ones who have the ability to destroy the nuclear program at Fordo. We could not complement that with our own military assets. What we do have is infrastructure in the Middle East, in Oman, in Dubai, and in Cyprus, which would help the Americans facilitate that. Then it comes down to a question, like you say, of legality, and whether this government, which is run by a former human rights lawyer, which takes a very dim view on military intervention more broadly, I think realistically, we probably won't get drawn into it, even if it is just to facilitate American, for example, refueling in Cyprus. But that's going to be an incredibly tricky question for David Lammy and Keir Starmer to argue when they are trying to obviously cozy up to Donald Trump and the American administration a lot more. I think it would be in our interest to help America in this war against Iran. But like I say, I think that's going to be an incredibly tricky position for this government to take.
If I may say, that last point, in terms of Britain's relationship with the United States, is one that I had not given perhaps enough focus to, and I'm indebted to you for bringing it up at the end, because I think it is germane.
We sort of are involved in an existential war with Iran at the moment. You're asked that question, are we? Yeah. Because if you think about it, the main provider of drones to Russia is called the Shahid drone. From day one in Russia, those drones have been targeting civilian structures in Ukraine. So it's to me that's terrorism basically. Now Russia basically is supply of drones. Main supply of drones is coming from Iran, and Russia now is an assembly plant for the Russian Shahid drones. Yeah. So Ukraine's been proving successful in taking out the factories of those. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
I suppose by the same measure, though, then we're already involved in the conflict because we've been selling arms to Israel for years.
Well, yeah, I mean,
that is a statement of fact, isn't it? We're involved with one side financially.
Yeah, but I'm looking at it in the Ukraine perspective here, right. And one of the indirect things about what's happening is that the whole manufacturing side of Iran's Shahid drone only had an Iranian drone commander taken down today, I think, as well. So obviously Putin is worried because if he doesn't get these supplies, right, that's going to be a big factor in the Ukraine war. So I see. Yeah, no wonder he's asking to become the mediator. Yeah, and Putin is running out of allies. Yeah, he's got Iran, and he's got a lot of smaller countries, but Iran and China are like his main allies. So this is going to be a major blow.
I see where you're coming from.
What you've got to ask yourself is, right, Trump it turned out to be like Putin's best mate. Putin sent him a happy birthday greeting the other day, right? So Trump is in a bit of a rock and a hard place now because, obviously Putin's desperate to keep Iran going. What does Trump do?
Well, I have to say that what I've seen Trump talk so far with regards to this conflict just all seems to be about him. That the 2-week delay, you get the sense that he wants a 2-week delay because otherwise it might be look like that the Netanyahu is pushing him around, that it's not Trump making the calls. It doesn't.
Do you know, right? You know the Spiderweb operation, right? The one that took about 30% of the Russians, yeah. The one that the Ukraine decided not to tell the Americans or anyone. Thank God they kept that to themselves. After that operation, Trump kept quiet for 2 days. There was nothing from Trump.
I'm liking the laughter, John.
Can you tell me that when was the last time that Britain had a threat by a foreign country? I think what I can remember was the Falklands War, 1980, and we never had any imminent threat from anybody at all. And I think we shouldn't get involved in this one.
British interests in the Middle East?
Only for the reason of oil, but people should go and watch the YouTube that foreign minister in 1973, November 11th, who gave Copenhagen interview about before 1973, Americans were nicking the oil and not giving anything. So in 1973, Americans wanted to cut the oil production by 25%, and the oil minister said, we'll cut it by 80%, and Britain won't have any GDP or whatever. And then Americans and the British, one of the interviewers asked him, what if they take over the country? And he said, we'll blow the pipelines, and they can blow the pipelines, and the entire world will. So that is why we got 14 or 15 British and American bases around to safeguard the investments. And why does Iran has to make their own nuclear weapons? They can go and buy from Putin, or they only need, like this morning somebody mentioned, we only need 9 to blow up Israel if they wanted. Americans got 7,900 or something. And North Korea got some 7,900.
And no one knows how many Israel has because it doesn't open up its facilities for scrutiny. Siva, it's if I may ask, do you say you don't perceive any imminent threat, that you can see that if we were to get involved that there will be repercussions, and I share that view. But do you think Keir Starmer is mindful of the mistakes of 2003 and will approach this situation with caution?
Yes, because we have to stand by the Americans and give the air bases to refuel. That's all we have to do. We don't have to send any
troops or anything. No.
Nothing. We have to stay back. I mean, today is the.
And you would be happy. You would be happy for the UK to offer the US the opportunity to launch their attacks from UK air bases.
We have no option. We have no option.
Siva, I suspect rather like my first guest, when I admitted I hadn't considered the UK's relationship with the United States when looking at this. I was looking solely at the UK and whether we should get involved in another dodgy conflict. But I have to say that your thoughts and his sort of confirm my growing awareness that yes, that business is important, and we're doing business with the United States, and we have to find a way of striking a balance, maintaining that trade, and keeping ourselves on a legally sound basis with regards to Israel and Iran.
They shouldn't really. Britain should not be involved in this war at all. I know they provide intelligence,
and weaponry to Israel involved as well. So we've done that too.
Of course, we have intelligence about the war in Sudan that no one talks about. We have intelligence about other places of the world. So that is not a new thing. But my point is, Britain should not have boots on the ground. Britain should not be sending fighter jets to fight Iran.
What about, which I think is the more likely scenario, Arnie, is should Britain allow the United States to fly bombing raids from UK air bases? Because we should allow that.
Yes, you can allow that. I tell you for why. I can tell you for why. Because now we're involved in a way, but the reason why you allow that is for Iran will not say we're involved wholly, by allowing that. But the fact of the matter is, we do not want Britain to be seen as one. When you say someone is involved fully,
well, as I understand it, and this is really thanks to, I'm going to put the onus of responsibility on The Guardian, because they did a really all-encompassing sort of legal think piece about the conflict. There is a legal opinion that even allowing the US to fly jets from UK air bases could put the UK in a dodgy legal position down the line.
Of course. of course, that is true. But Matthew, you make me laugh. Well, not just you in general, but the fact of the matter is, there's no way, there's no cartel on this planet where United States, Britain, or even any European country, or like France, Spain, or the big shots, will be taken to court and actually be.
Fair point. I mean, the Chilcot inquiry is about as bad as it got for Tony Blair, and Chilcot's was damning of the poor quality of the intelligence that took us to war. That Tony Blair overstated the case, and Tony Blair basically said, "Yeah, I acknowledge the report, but I ignore everything it said about it," and that was the end of the story. So I can't deny you're right there, I suspect.